Welcome back. I've got joining me on the show, Eloy Benavides. Eloy is a mortgage loan officer, really an expert, and his website, his company is AskEloy.com. So obviously that says it all you need to know right there. Ask Eloy about anything mortgage related, but he's a 25-year residential loan officer, numerous awards, numerous accolades for industry and community contributions. Eloy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, Eloy, you're in the Dallas area. We were talking for just a few minutes ago, about Dallas and things are still happening in Dallas. We're down in the Houston market. Things are starting to slow down around the country. Obviously, the interest rate, being where it is. I want to kind of dig into a little bit of, the mortgage, process. And there's a lot of confusion, it seems like, among sellers sometimes between the difference between a pre-approval and a pre-qualification letter for mortgages. What's the difference between those, and why should sellers even care?
Andrew, I don't think it's just among sellers. It's amongst realtors. It's amongst buyers. It's amongst the whole industry. I think we use those words interchangeably, unfortunately, in this business. Pre-qualification versus pre-approval. To me, I compare it to kind of being pre-qualified for a credit card. You didn't quite provide documentation. It's not quite in your hands, but it seems as if, though, based on what little information we've gathered, you may qualify for a loan. As to where pre-approval is, hey, we've looked at your credit, we've looked at your income, your assets, your verified documentation to support all these items. And at this point in time, barring any significant change, you've essentially approved for a loan. So the pre-qual, in my mind, is a lot weaker. It can be telephone-based. They're usually given in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, and everything sounds promising. And the pre-approval is kind of the next step. We've gone a step further. You provided a volunteer documentation to support those items to support your application, and we've gotten almost an underwritten approval to where we can help you get this thing wrapped up. And it's just a matter of the asset piece or the property coming up and meeting requirements.
How long does a pre-qualification last? If somebody goes through the process to pre-qualify, it sounds like it's a more in-depth process. Pre-approval is really easy. How long does a qualification last after you go through that that whole process?
The pre-qual is based on your credit, essentially, right? It's based on the fact that your credit has been pulled. You meet certain criteria based on your credit scores, account history, whatnot. And as long as that credit doesn't really significantly change, you're going to be qualified. However, technically, it does last from a 90-day period from the time you pulled your credit, as that credit report will expire and will require to pull a new credit per se. And the great thing is, in today's market, they're allowing soft pulls. We're used to the hard pull inquiry, dropping your scores. The lenders have adapted, and they started using soft pull inquiries to pre-underwrite you. So that second, third inquiry down the road doesn't really affect your FICO scores. But 90 days to answer your question, essentially, with the soft pull update down the road.
So, is it your opinion, should people be getting a pre-qualification if they know they're in the market for a house? Like, go ahead and get pre-qualified so you can apply that to whatever purchase that you're going to buy, or does it really matter? Can you find the house and then go through the process?
That's a great question. I think we've been programmed historically to go find the house and then get financing for it. However, in this day and age, there are a lot of intricacies to financing that need to be addressed up front. It's not just about credit. It's not about what my dad got or what my cousins got. They qualified, so I should qualify. It's a little more in depth, and each loan is unique to its owner. So if your self-employment situation is different than your dad's employment W-2, or your savings scenario is different than theirs, or your credit history is different than theirs, then it's imperative that you get a pre-qualification, pre-approval, because we're going to fish all that out up front. You don't want to be under contract on a house that you really love, and all of a sudden you realize you don't have the work history or job history or income to support it. So in this case, a quick 10-minute phone call can help prevent some of those headaches. A consultation with a qualified loan officer can help you address what questions you may have about how to file your taxes, what incomes are necessary, savings amounts. There's different programs for different reasons. And I always say our job is to provide those options and for you to choose which option fits you best.
That's a good point. For a lot of our audience, Eloy, are business owners, and they have self-employment income. Some people pay themselves a W-2. As a business owner, how does that documentation process change? Is it harder to get pre-qualified, pre-approved as a business owner than a W-2 employee?
That's a great question. I think 95% of our clients are now self-employed. And given the current economy and the way things are going, I think it's going to continue to be that way. So Traditionally, a FHA conventional, we call it a GSE, a government-sponsored loan, is basically going to require tax returns, and they're going to base your income for qualification off those tax returns. So let's just say, for instance sake, you're making $10,000 a month as a round number, just to keep it simple. Most guidelines would say you're capped at, say, 40% of that income. $4,000 would be your qualifying amount, and maybe you can find a house for that value. If that's not quite enough, then we can go off of alternative documentation. But for the sake of argument, all these GSEs require a tax return to document your income, not your gross, but your net after deductions. And being a savvy business owner, you're going to take advantage of these tax deductions. So why wouldn't you? It's allowed. So you're going to do that at tax time. However, come home purchasing time, you're going to regret it because your income on documentation level, the paper, is going to be significantly less. So now there's alternatives. The most common being a bank statement income, as opposed to using tax returns, whatever it may be. We're going to take 3, 4, 6, 12 months of bank statements and what average those deposits, and that becomes your income, replacing the tax return declared income that you used. There's other alternatives, profit and losses. There's one called DSCR for investors, but particularly for our self-employed business owner clientele, the tax returns are usually not very favorable. So we use some sort of alternative documentation.
That makes sense. So one of the things that, as a real estate investor, I get to take advantage of as a full-time real estate investor is depreciation on my real estate portfolio, which reduces taxable income, right? Are you able to add that back in? If a business owner is a real estate investor, depreciations, reduce their taxable income. Can that get added back in that qualification process?
Under most programs, yeah, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are very, very general in that regard. They do allow depreciation. They allow some other line items to be added back, mileage, one-time expenses. If you're remodeling, it's a huge remodel, $100,000, that can be added back to your net income. So tax returns aren't necessarily not favorable. It just depends on how you're filing them. I see a lot of bad tax returns in our business, a lot of clientele, and a lot of CPAs take shortcuts, and they just don't properly document these deductions. And if they're done properly, it can be advantageous and correct, and you can still get a home if they're done correctly.
What does a pre-qualification, Eloy, does it affect your credit score and pre-approval? Does it count as a hit? And
historically, I would say yes. We were doing hard hits as an industry for 20 years. Here recently, with a change in business models and structures, we've seen that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have actually loosened up and allowed soft pulls to be pre-underwritten. So at this point in time, going through the proper company or when they're offering the services, we can do what's called a soft pull inquiry, not a hard inquiry. We're basically just getting a preliminary check behind the scenes, and it will allow us to get pre-approval based on a soft pull inquiry. So there's going to be zero impact to your credit with a soft pull.
And when you guys are pulling, credit, soft pull, hard pull, are you looking at all three credit bureaus, or is one? Are you pulling one? How different are the credit scores between credit bureaus when people are trying to do this process?
That's a great question. That's a great question because there are variances. There's more than 3 credit bureaus actually. There's like 2,000 of them. We focus on 3 of them. TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Those tend to be the big 3, and they do report different data at different times. Certain creditors don't report data to all 3 bureaus. That's why you get variances. If you have 2 accounts and those 2 happen to report all 3, you'll see consistent scores. If you have 10 accounts and half of them report to 2 of the 3 and the other half to the opposite 2, you're going to see a big discrepancy in your credit scores.
Interesting.
Typically speaking, when we're looking at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA loans, USDA, VA, they take the middle of the 3 scores, regardless of which bureau it is. Middle of the 3, the lesser of the 2, there's only 2, or the 1 if there's only 1. Those are standards. Now, if there are alternative documentation options we're looking into, the bank statement, DSCR, rental stuff, then we're going to look at that specific investor guidelines. Some want TransUnion, some are Experian, some follow the GSE requirements. So that's a great question, and my generic answer is it depends on how we're going to qualify you. Typically speaking, I'd say the middle of 3, but there are variances where we may not. We may use alternatives.
Gotcha. So one more question. I think we've got a couple minutes left, but as a business owner, business owners are generally loading up their credit cards pretty high because they're buying, lots of things that go into that business. Like for me, I buy a lot of construction materials, appliances, and stuff like that. I load my credit card up to the brim, and then I pay it off. When is the right time? But that affects your credit score, right? If you're utilizing all that credit, it lowers your credit score. When is the right time to go through that pre-qualification process, pay the card off, they report, you get a better credit score. Does that make sense? Like, when's the best time to run this process if a business owner loads their credit cards up like I do and pays them off every month?
Preferably, you want to do it about a month and a half or two out before you start the application process. You want to give it a sufficient time for that creditor to report to the bureaus your new balances, and from there you won't be able to pick them up and pick them up and send them to your lender. As far as when we pull, the cycles tend to be they report once or twice a month, and from there it gets sent to your bureau at that point in time. So you're about a month out, maybe two. You can definitely pre-qualify based on what you have today, and then from there we can pull a new credit prior to your closing and/or clear to close. And we can update your FICO score at that point in time to qualify you better. Now, rates have impacts, or excuse me, your FICO score have impacts on your interest rates, closing costs. Those are significant. If you're going to pay them off, it's worth it because you're going to get benefit by a lower interest rate, lower fees, and who knows what down the road. So paying those down during or before the process is very, very much an important and crucial decision you should consider.
There's the expert, Eloy. Appreciate you coming on the show, Eloy. We look forward to having you more. I got lots of questions about these processes, so we're gonna get into them next time. Thanks for joining us on the show. We'll be right back, everybody.
Thanks, sir. Have a good one.